Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Academy Critic. We're going to be covering the 67th Academy Awards ceremony, which honors films released in 1994 this episode. If you know anything about 1994 and the movies that were released that year, you know that this is going to be an awesome episode. There was a lot of really iconic movies, and I'm excited to get into them. So let's start off with the Best Original Song category. The nominees are Make Up Your Mind in The Paper, Look What Love Has Done in Junior, Hakuna Matata in The Lion King, Circle of Life in The Lion King, and Can You Feel the Love Tonight in The Lion King. So, only snub I'm going to throw in here is I Just Can't Wait to Be King, also from The Lion King. Now, I know we don't want to oversaturate this category with just one movie, but I am really fond of I Just Can't Wait to Be King. I think it's a really good song. Now, the only movie that I've seen of these nominees is The Lion King, but I did listen to Make Up Your Mind by Randy Newman, and it sounds like a pretty typical Randy Newman song. He's got a very distinct voice. I mean, no one really else makes songs that sound like him. I think he sounds really unique. You can hear, I mean, his most famous one is You've Got a Friend in Me, which I guess came out after this, so I guess it was a little bit, he wasn't as recognizable maybe at the time as some of the stuff he made later on in Toy Story and Monsters, Inc. But it's not a bad song. I just don't think it can really stand up to the Lion King songs, which let's get into those real quick. All right, so Hakuna Matata is the first one we're going to talk about. Definitely has a really catchy rhythm, super upbeat. I don't personally care for the bit about Pumbaa at the water hole. But that just kind of shows how great the average song quality is in this movie, because this is my least favorite nominee of the nominated Lion King songs, and it's still like a really undeniable song. So I think it still is like a testament to how good the music in the Lion King really is. All right, let's talk now about The Circle of Life. So this is one of those songs that everyone really wants to sing, and we generally fake it because not many of us really know how to speak Zulu, which is the language that the song is in. For the most part, it switches to English later on. But the opening, but yeah, I mean, this is a song that makes the opening scene of The Lion King one of the most iconic openings ever. I mean, just from the impact of that opening majestic sunrise all the way to the hard-hitting title card, it's just so memorable. And I actually would be very understanding of this song winning, but it did not win. Can You Feel the Love Tonight won. So this is just a Lion King fest right now. I mean, it's got a lot of really good songs. And this is the one that ended up walking away with the award. So yeah, it is deserving. It's got a truly beautiful melody that moves the love story along really quickly, and that's ultimately super important for the story because the movie didn't spend too much time beforehand on the romantic side of the relationship between Nala and Simba, which makes this, love montage an essential part of their relationship growth, and the music just really sweeps you away and makes their whole relationship much more believable, I'd say. The only downside to this song is that while it is gorgeous, it ends with Timon and Pumbaa sobbing, which is not gorgeous. But yeah, a really great song. Sticking with music, the original score category nominees are The Shawshank Redemption, Little Women, Interview with the Vampire, Forrest Gump, and The Lion King. Now, I'm starting with Shawshank Redemption, which Thomas Newman really cooked on. I particularly love the Shawshank State Prison Stoic theme, as well as Brooks Was Here and End Title. Those songs by Thomas Newman are all very, very good. They carry a very distinct tone, and it really matches the emotional roller coaster that this movie is as it navigates the heart of the human spirit and what it means to be free and to have hope. Some of the music is extremely dark and brooding. Sometimes it's hopeful and fills you with awe and is encouraged. Sometimes it's downright sad. But what's undeniable is that this movie is very talked about, but I think the score isn't as talked about. I think it actually gets slept on, even though it's really quite good. Now, sticking with Thomas Newman, let's talk about Little Women. So although we're still talking about Thomas Newman, we're talking about a different movie. But that's just how good he is. He got nominated twice this year. And you know what? He does deserve it. I do prefer Shawshank's score over Little Women's, but they're really quite different. Little Women does have a very beautiful score. It's got soft strings and bow, both of which are used really good. But it also has quite a bit of trumpets, which is unlike Thomas Newman. If you're familiar with his scores, he's got a very unique sound, but it very rarely involves something as out there as trumpets. It's usually a little bit more mellow, a bit more low key, but this is a very delightful score to listen to overall. All right, Forrest Gump has a lot going for it. Alan Silvestri hits so much range with this movie. I mean, the Forrest Gump suite alone, I mean, is it just such a musical journey? I mean, just go listen to that real quick. It's like an 8-minute long song, but that it kind of is a good walkthrough of just all the amazing melody hits that are in this movie. I mean, the score is just spectacular. I mean, it starts off with the iconic piano melody, and then grows into be something much more impactful. So it starts off kind of introducing us to the innocence and simplicity of Forrest Gump, and then grows into something much greater when the orchestra ends up entering the music, and it just brings it from a mellow and beautiful melody to something victorious and triumphant. It can make me ponder and reflect on the simple beauties of life, and then like a minute later have me pumping my fists in the air out of just pure hype. It's very, very good. I used to think, like, hardcore, this is the one that should have won original score, and I still kind of do prefer the Forrest Gump score, but a recent listen through of the actual winner, which we'll get to in a minute, has made me realize that the gap I had between this movie and the winner was much too big. And I can eventually see myself coming to be totally in favor of the actual winner of this award, which is The Lion King. We've already talked about the songs in The Lion King, but when you listen to like the whole score, as I recently did, you realize, okay, all of the music in this movie is just slaps. I mean, Hans Zimmer, this is his first Oscar, and we're going to see him again for sure. He's one of the most iconic. And if you watch this movie, you're going to understand why. I believe that Remember Who You Are is probably the best. Go listen to Remember Who You Are by Hans Zimmer. It's probably the best of a movie full of bangers, honestly. But yeah, it's got a more distinct sound than most film scores. I think a lot of that is because of its use of traditional African instruments. Makes it very fun to listen to. I really love this score, like a lot. I wouldn't be mad at a Forrest Gump win, as I already said, but I can't pretend that seeing this movie win doesn't make me smile. It's the score nominees for this year were really stacked, and it's cool that this won. The nominees for sound effects editing are Forrest Gump, Clear and Present Danger, and Speed. The only nominee I'm going to mention here is Leon the Professional. I just feel like it should have got something. It was pretty overlooked. If it was going to get nominated for something, I feel like sound effects editing is an area where it does shine. But without further ado, let's talk about Forrest Gump. This movie is doing a lot of different things with its sound. It has storms, got general background city commotion, but it also becomes a war movie for a decent segment. Yet despite juggling all these different aspects, it never really ceases to flow. It's pretty impressive, actually, considering that that the sound is far from the first thing I think about when I think about this movie. It does mix pretty well. Okay, but the winner of this award is Speed, and I think one of the main reasons that Speed beat out Forrest Gump is because of the consistency in its sound. Now, Forrest Gump has pauses and moments of stillness. Don't get me wrong, Forrest Gump is a much better movie because of this, but the constant action of Speed demands an unending display of sound from beginning to end, and it never breaks that illusion. Okay, the sound nominees are The Shawshank Redemption, Legends of the Fall, Forrest Gump, Clear and Present Danger, and Speed. Now, let's start off with The Shawshank Redemption. Now, every so often, this category will throw out something that's a little bit out of the blue. I don't really have too much to say about Shawshank's sound. I don't think it has bad sound. I was never watched the movie like, that sounds fake or that's not good sound. Quite frankly, I'm not actually thinking about the sound. It just kind of disappears into the movie, which I guess is what it's supposed to do. So I suppose it's doing its job. It's just not a movie that I usually expect to get nominated for this award, even though it's got pretty flawless sound design, I'd say. All right, Forrest Gump. Now, what I said about Forrest Gump in the last category applies here as well. But I will say that the battle scenes in Vietnam are probably where the sound shines the most, because you got jets, you got explosions, you got helicopters, and bullets and artillery, and the environment. A lot of the sounds come together and it ultimately just works really, really well. All right, Speed is the winner once again. It feels a little repetitive to say this at this point, but the sound really adds to the energy of the movie. It's a big, loud action movie. It maximizes its sound to great effect. It's the type of movie that you would expect to win this award, and it does do a really good job with it. Just watch it or listen to it. Now, the visual effects nominees are True Lies, The Mask, and Forrest Gump. So, talking first about True Lies, I just got to say that James Cameron, he tends to do really well in VFX. It's one of his most consistent qualities as a director. He's not new to CGI, having just done Terminator 2 a few years earlier, but a lot of the effects in this movie are actually practical. For example, the F-35 sequence, which is probably the most impressive on a visual effects level. There's no digitally generated images there. It's all real, but it's just compiled on top of it. So they filmed that scene on a massive green screen set, which I believe was the biggest green screen set created at the time. And then they layered that over real footage, but it looks totally convincing and makes for a really thrilling action sequence. But Forrest Gump is the movie that actually ended up walking away with this award, and it's not the type of movie you usually think of as a VFX pioneer, but when you look at what it's actually doing, it's pretty impressive work. So they obviously do a great job layering shots on top of each other. Tom Hanks, putting him inside historical footage. Also, some of the CGI helicopters in Vietnam look really good as well, but where the movie really shines is what it does with the presidents. So we don't really think about it because we don't notice it, but Forrest Gump is truly the first real example of deepfake. But it's just super seamless. And it blows me away that they were able to do this in the mid-90s. But human faces, especially those of American presidents, they're really hard to do this with VFX because we have such a deep level of familiarity with them. But this movie does it flawlessly, making it more of a VFX pioneer than most people give it credit for. I added this on, actually, because I didn't originally write this into the script, but it came to me later, and I was like, wait, I didn't even think about that, which is a testament to just the fact that the VFX are that good. I wasn't even registering that this is VFX, but they edited out Gary Sinise's legs to make him look like a double amputee. The fact that that even registered for me is crazy, but it just looks flawless. I mean, the movie isn't flashy about its VFX for the most part. It just is trying to do the best that it can, and I think it's really cool that it did actually get the recognition that it deserves, quite honestly. Now, the nominees for Best Cinematography are Wyatt Earp, The Shawshank Redemption, Red, Forrest Gump, and Legends of the Fall. So, let's talk first about The Shawshank Redemption, which when I think of Shawshank Redemption cinematography, I don't first think of the wide, sweeping shots of beauty, even though they're there, and don't get me wrong, they look great. But I think where the movie's cinematography shines the most is with the up-close subtleties. There is a lot of focus on the shots that are restricted, just like our characters. I mean, there's only so much wide sweeping shots of beauty you can have in a prison movie. A lot of the characters are just spending their time locked up indoors, but it still takes advantage of that and manages to be very delicate and up close, getting us even closer with our characters and the experience they go through, whereas most of the wide shots of beauty kind of save themselves for the end of the movie. I think it works really well with the film's narrative, actually. Now, the next nominee is Red. Now, Red is the last film of the Three Colors trilogy. White had come out earlier that same year, but I don't think it's as visually striking as Red, though I am biased, Red being my favorite color personally. But I think it's cool to see the movie here. It's a unique pull for the Oscars, quite frankly. It goes without saying the use of color is the most impactful part of the cinematography in all of the Three Colors movies, really, which they made a trilogy using the three colors of the French flag to tell three distinct stories. Overall, I'm glad that this movie is getting recognized for its commitment. It's not a movie that I would expect to, but it's a movie that deserves to. Okay, now, of the nominees I've seen, Forrest Gump, in my opinion, is the most beautiful. The landscapes in this movie are especially gorgeous to look at. The sunsets are beautiful. Even scenes that are inside are or not close to nature tend to be framed up in a super memorable way. But there is silhouette. If there is a silhouette or a sunset or other great opportunity for beauty, the filmmakers totally take advantage and it really pays off. The movie looks gorgeous. The nominees for art direction are Legends of the Fall, Interview with the Vampire, Forrest Gump, Bullets Over Broadway, and The Madness of King George. So, starting off with Forrest Gump, I'm going to say that there's a lot of different sets, and they all feel very real and very, genuine and lived in. But I want to focus on the one that stands out the most and plays a larger role for our character than any of the other ones, and that's probably the Gump house. Now, I actually thought beforehand that the Gump house was a pre-existing house that they just ended up filming in, but it was apparently completely constructed for the movie. Yet its location is so idyllic, and it's so big and real, and the interior is so authentic and lived in, it definitely deserves to be here. The next movie I'm going to talk about is Bullets Over Broadway. And what I'm going to say about these sets are that they're immersive, because they can't just sneak around a soundstage and use editing to hide the sides of the set. It's got to be all encompassing, because most of the scenes in this movie are long takes, which means that you can't, if you got to pan a camera one way or another, you can't see the edge of a set or the crew. It's got to be all encompassing, so you can't just focus on a little bit at a time and have the rest be sloppy. The whole set has to be very well organized, very well decorated, and all orchestrated. And quite frankly, I think it does a really good job. I never questioned the sets once while I was watching the movie. The winner of this award is The Madness of King George, which, being set in the 18th century, they fill in a lot of castles. And I'm not completely certain which exterior sets were constructed versus previously existing, but the interiors are really cool and elaborate. Part of me does wish that Forrest Gump had won this award, just because the sets of Forrest Gump feel more lived in and legit compared to the pristine and polished home of a king. But that's the art direction you're going to get with a movie about monarchy, a movie like The Madness of King George, which does have very good art direction. The costume design nominees are Queen Margot, Maverick, Little Women, Bullets Over Broadway, and The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. So, a couple snubs I'm going to mention here. First of all, I'll say that Forrest Gump, I think that there's a lot of variety in the costumes in Forrest Gump, which I would have expected to get nominated. Also, The Madness of King George, which I actually, while I was watching it, thought it got nominated just because of the historical accuracy, but it didn't. But oh well. Let's talk first about Little Women, which I'll use this to intro into the Little Women conversation. When I started watching the movie, I was told that it took place during the American Revolution pretty early on. And I was actually able to see throughout the movie that was a mistake and that wasn't true, and it actually took place during the Civil War. So it doesn't, for a long time, the movie doesn't state when the movie takes place, but I was able to put together that, okay, the information I was given actually wasn't true. It actually takes place like a century later, just because of the costumes are so 19th century. So I think that's a good testament to the quality of the costume design department, that I was able to extrapolate the setting of the film from the costumes, which, being like informing the setting isn't the main role of a costume design necessarily, or I'll say that the costume design shouldn't be the lead department in being the setting for a film. But Little Women actually did a really good job with that, so good for them. They did a really good job. Okay, I don't have as much to say about Bullets Over Broadway, but the costume design, I mean, they look really good. It's not a movie I'd expect to win an Oscar for this, and it didn't. But yeah, it takes place in the 1920s, so the period-accurate flapper and gangster outfits are all doing a certainly very good job. The makeup nominees are Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Forrest Gump, and Ed Wood. The only movie here that I've seen is Forrest Gump, and I think it's here for a couple of reasons. The first reason, that I'm going to talk about is the injury makeup in Vietnam. The best example being one of Forrest's comrades who gets burned in the forest, in the jungle. I'm saying Forrest too much. That's bro's name. But yeah, one of Forrest's comrades gets burned while he's in the jungles of Vietnam, and you only actually briefly see the makeup of the burn victim, but it's very effective and looks really good. The other reason I'm going to talk about is the aging. So the same actress plays Forrest's mother when she's young and when she's old, but they use the makeup to age her, and I think she looks really good. So yeah, I'm glad the makeup got nominated for Forrest Gump, but I haven't seen any of the other nominees. The film editing nominees are Speed, The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, Hoop Dreams, and Forrest Gump. I haven't seen Hoop Dreams, but I do think it's cool that a documentary got into the editing category. That doesn't usually happen. But let's talk about Speed, which is a movie that is constantly it's constantly on the move, quite literally, in every sense of the word. And the editor has to keep up with that rapid pace so that it doesn't ever feel dull. And when I was watching the movie, I thought that it had only gotten nominated for the sound categories, but I was thinking as I was watching the movie, the editing here is actually pretty sharp. So when I found out later on that it did actually get nominated for editing, I was like, okay, cool. I thought that was really cool. It does deserve it. I'm not surprised. I shouldn't be surprised, at least, that Speed is here. The next movie we're going to talk about is The Shawshank Redemption, which has got to be one of the most watchable movies of all time. It simply never gets boring, never drags, never rushes ahead of itself. It's not. I don't think of the editing because it's pretty subtle with it, but you're hooked the entire runtime. It's just a masterclass of storytelling, and it definitely deserves to be here. Then we got Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction does not tell its story in chronological order, unlike these other movies, and that's something that I didn't know going in, and it actually makes the your first and your second viewing experience very different. I actually preferred my second viewing experience of the movie to the first because I didn't know going in that it was told out of chronological order. But on my second viewing, I was able to put the story together. It's like putting together a puzzle. It's not hard to put together, but it's a very stimulating movie to watch for that reason. So I think that really adds to the movie watching experience, the editing here. All right, the winner of this award was Forrest Gump. See. Look at the powerhouse of movies that this year was. I mean, this is what they call kind of the 1994 movie trinity. The Forrest Gump, The Shawshank Redemption, and Pulp Fiction. They're so good for their own reasons. But I am glad that Forrest Gump won editing. Not just because it goes back and forth between Forrest's actual life and him sitting on the bench telling it to these people in a really fun way, but it gradually takes us through his whole life, or at least the first few decades of his life. And once again, I can't emphasize how well paced everything is, and just how every scene is exactly where it needs to be for exactly as long as it should be. And I'm never bored and never not engaged. I'm always engaged, never lose interest, completely hooked. It deserves the editing Oscar, even though it's just a total powerhouse of nominees right here. All right, now on to the acting awards, starting with actress in a supporting role. The nominees are Jennifer Tilly in Bullets Over Broadway, Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction, Helen Mirren in The Madness of King George, Rosemary Harris in Tom and Viv, and Diane Weist in Bullets Over Broadway. Starting off with Jennifer Tilly in Bullets Over Broadway, I just gotta say that her character kind of pisses me off sometimes. Not Jennifer Tilly, but her character, and that is what she's supposed to be doing. So she's doing a good job, but dang, she's annoying. I don't think that her character is, while she's doing a good job, I don't think her character is that interesting overall. She's annoying and she's pretty surface level. I think there's more prominent performances here than Jennifer Tilly, even though she's doing exactly what her character is calling for and exactly what she's supposed to be doing as an actress. All right, next up we're going to talk about Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction, who is the actress that I would have given the award to. She steals the show for quite a while. There's a date scene that's like 30, maybe even 40 minutes long. She is just eating up every second of it. So she's on a date with John Travolta, but because of how funny she is, how playful she is, how realistic her acting is, she's so memorable. She's one of the people that you leave the theater. I haven't seen this movie in theaters, but I imagine you leave the theater thinking about Uma Thurman, like as one of the most prominent roles here, and she definitely is. Not just anyone gets to be on the cover of Pulp Fiction. Even though her character doesn't really go through too much change or development, as a supporting actress, she's stealing the show. Okay, now, Helen Mirren in The Madness of King George. She's my second favorite performance right after Uma Thurman. I think she's got some more heartfelt and sentimental moments of the actresses here, actually. The scene where she shines the most, she plays the queen, King George's wife. And I believe, in my opinion, her most heartfelt and memorable acting is when she's alone with King George on the castle roof at night talking to him. It's actually a really heartbreaking performance. I can see that she's putting forth her best effort here, and I'm glad she got nominated. All right, the winner is Diane Weist in Bullets Over Broadway. Now, the best thing I can say about her performance here is that I did not even know that it was Diane Weist. Now, keep in mind, Diane Weist plays one of the main roles in Edward Scissorhands, which I watched very recently for the last episode. And then when I was watching Bullets Over Broadway, I had no idea that it was her. And then I was looking through like, okay, who are the nominees again? And I saw that it was her. I was like, oh, really? So that is really impressive. That being said, not my favorite performance. She definitely embodies her character, but I do find it less memorable than other performances, particularly that of Uma Thurman. But I digress. Now, Best Actor in a Supporting Role nominees are Gary Sinise in Forrest Gump, Paul Scofield in Quiz Show, Chaz Palminteri in Bullets Over Broadway, Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction, and Martin Landau in Ed Wood. All right, so let's start off with Gary Sinise in Forrest Gump. Lieutenant Dan. Yeah, Gary Sinise is really good in this movie. He actually does undergo quite a bit of change and development as a character, from a war-hardened soldier to a bitter and resentful veteran to a genuinely well-meaning and kind person. And he handles this change so well, especially because he's paired with Forrest Gump. And Forrest and Lieutenant Dan, being such different characters, make for a really fun duo. I love Lieutenant Dan. Gary Sinise is awesome in this movie. All right, Chaz Palminteri in Bullets Over Broadway. As memorable as Chaz Palminteri is, I can't exactly say he's playing a role that's unique to this movie. If you look just 1 year prior in 1993, he's in the movie A Bronx Tale, playing very, very similar movie. So it's possible he actually got typecast kind of into this mafia role, which makes sense considering he is actually really good in it. I just didn't find myself blown away by him, even though I was very entertained by him. On the other hand, Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction, I was blown away by, as were quite a few other people in this movie, actually. He is so entertaining to watch. I mean, he has a great screenplay to work with for sure, but he is dialing his performance alone up. He's dialing everything up to 11. He's he's really giving it his all. He's a very loud performance. I mean, maybe you don't like that, but he's my favorite nominee. He's the character that I think about when I leave the theater, to the point where I'm actually surprised it had him as a supporting actor. I know we see John Travolta more, but I just feel like he's stealing the show. Kind of like Uma Thurman, but even to a greater extent. If you look at the climax of the movie in the diner, John Travolta's like just off in the bathroom during that movie, and Samuel L. Jackson is like in that scene at least, he's the protagonist. But yeah, he's my favorite of the nominees. Even though I haven't seen Ed Wood, the winning movie, Samuel L. Jackson is pretty undeniable in Pulp Fiction. Now, the nominees for Best Actress in a Leading Role are Susan Sarandon in The Client, Winona Ryder in Little Women, Miranda Richardson in Tom and Viv, Jodie Foster in Nell, and Jessica Lange in Blue Sky. So, Little Women is actually the only of these nominees that I've seen. It is crazy, actually, that I haven't seen any of these others. I kind of wish I had so that I could have another performance to really compare Winona Ryder with, but looking at Winona Ryder's performance on its own merit, you can see that she's very committed to the character and giving a heartfelt performance, which she does. She also does a really good job at balancing out both the love and conflict, the playing and fighting that pretty much anyone with siblings can relate to, making her character super believable and very endearing as well. The lead actor nominees are John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, Paul Newman in Nobody's Fool, Nigel Hawthorne in The Madness of King George, Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption, and Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump. So, let's start off with John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. So, I know that this movie brought back John Travolta's career, and he's great in it. But if I'm being completely honest, I'm not as on board of the John Travolta train as most people are. Like I said, he's great, but I find it odd that it states here it's him as the lead actor. I already talked about Samuel L. Jackson's role in the climax of the film, and I recognize that John Travolta is present in most of the plot lines of the movie and has more screen time than any other character, but most of the time he's on screen, he's sharing it with Uma Thurman or Samuel L. Jackson, both of which I believe are overshadowing him. So while he is really good, it's just odd to see him as the lead when he's like the third character I think of when I think of this movie. I know it sounds like I'm hating, and I don't mean to, because I don't. In fact, I love, but he just happens to be paired up with a really, really great cast. All right. Nigel Hawthorne in The Madness of King George. So last episode we watched Robert De Niro descend into madness, or at least a severe mental handicap, if not insanity. But now we get to watch King George III's descent, and I actually didn't know going into this movie that, before knowing about this movie, I didn't know that the latter years of King George's life, he dealt with such mental instability. I found it actually quite educational, as a matter of fact. But yeah, Nigel Hawthorne does a great job. He can be this serious monarch at times, but he can also be this joyful and whimsical, even if it is the result of madness. But yeah, sometimes it's just sad to see him lose everything, but Hawthorne handles it all with such deliberateness. It's a really memorable performance for sure. All right, now let's talk about Morgan Freeman in The Shawshank Redemption. So I always thought of Andy Dufresne as the main character of The Shawshank Redemption, and he is. But when you look at it, the story is undeniably told through the perspective of Red. Now, the book is actually a first-person account of the story from Red's perspective, and all of the narration that Morgan Freeman is doing are all excerpts from the novella. Shawshank State Prison being a place of such discomfort and uncertainty and corruption, Red actually provides a reliable and friendly presence. And in that regard, we're able to see his comfort through the eyes of Andy Dufresne, making the audience just fall in love with him even more. All right, the winner of this award is Tom Hanks for playing Forrest Gump. And quite frankly, can you really even argue with this one? this is probably to this day his best performance, and he's a very talented actor, so that's saying a lot. But yeah, one of my favorite fun facts about this movie is that Tom Hanks based his speaking mannerisms and patterns off of the child actor who played Forrest as a little boy. That's just the way he naturally spoke. So Tom Hanks just kind of followed suit. But yeah, Forrest Gump has a huge heart, and watching him impact the lives of so many people, all while maintaining his simple appreciation for life and those around him, it's just a beautiful movie overall, and that is in no small part thank you to Tom Hanks for holding it all together in this undeniably iconic performance. All right, the original screenplay nominees are Red, Heavenly Creatures, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Bullets Over Broadway, and Pulp Fiction. The only nominee, or the only snub I'm going to throw in here real quick, is Chungking Express, which they wouldn't have ever gone for, but I do really like the dialogue exchange in that one. But without further ado, let's move on to the first nominee, which is Red, which is also not a movie I would have expected to find here, but it's cool that they went for it. The dialogue exchange in this movie is also really, really good, especially because it navigates a super unlikely and unexpected friendship that arises. Now, I did question whether or not this movie actually qualifies as an original screenplay, being the last movie of a trilogy. However, it is an anthology trilogy, meaning that each film kind of acts on its own without being a straight-up sequel to anything prior. However, this movie does actually tie in the latter, or the former two films by the end. However, I also think these movies were conceived as a singular idea, making their release order rather irrelevant in terms of originality. So yeah, this is an original movie, but I did have kind of raised that question. But it is cool to see this here. It's not a movie I would have expected. All right, the next movie we're going to talk about is Four Weddings and a Funeral. So I think the best thing that this movie has going for it is its humor. It's sincerely funny. There's a lot of comedic moments, but I was still rather surprised to see a rom-com like this in the screenplay category. It's a good rom-com, but it still falls into some of the tropes that most of them. It's a formulaic genre, and this movie doesn't really seem to be breaking that formula in any extreme way. It can be a little predictable at times. I also think that the relationship we're supposed to be rooting for isn't explored in a particularly deep way. There's this scene where they're on a date, and for some reason, I forget why she does this, but she starts kind of walking him through her entire body count, which is like massive, by the way. And I just feel like, is there a less romantic thing that someone can do on a date? But I digress. I did enjoy the movie. I had a good time. I wouldn't say it's got one of the best screenplays of the year, but it's pretty funny. Mr. Bean is the priest during one of the weddings, which I didn't know I needed in my life, but I'm really glad I have that now. All right, the next nominee I'm talking about is Bullets Over Broadway, which I've only seen a few Woody Allen movies, but I'm already kind of able to recognize his unique writing style. To dive into that deeper, I'll just say that the main character of this movie talks kind of the same way that Alvy from Annie Hall does, to some extent, but each character does kind of have their own mannerisms and way of speaking, which is an often overlooked aspect of screenwriting. Every character has to have their own voice. If they're having a back and forth, but they kind of have the same way of speaking, then the audience is going to be able to know, okay, this is just a screenwriter's internal dialogue being plastered onto a page, and then from that onto the screen. Whereas you have to be a little bit more in depth and be able to like look at and keep consistent with how multiple people would speak. And I think that's one of the strengths of this movie's screenwriting. So the story follows this playwright and director who's struggling to hold on to the creative control of his story as the mob is breathing down his neck, because one of the main stars of the play is the wife of a mob boss. And I don't know if Woody Allen wrote it for this purpose, but it may be an expression of something that he relates to as an artist. Like I said, I don't know if this is the cause of what he's doing this for, but I do like to think of it as an allegory for the struggle of a creative control between a director and a film studio. I found that idea rather intriguing. The winner of this award was Pulp Fiction, and I gotta say, if they gave it to anything else, they would never have lived that down. It's really good that this movie won, more than deserves it. This is largely considered Quentin Tarantino's masterpiece, his best movie. It's not my favorite, but it's really good, so it's super fitting that this was also his first Oscar. It's got such gripping, entertaining dialogue. The date scene between John Travolta and Uma Thurman, their dialogue exchange is great. The scene when Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta, when they're just shooting the breeze before like going in to do their work as henchmen, it's just so fun to listen to, and it just flows like such real talk. And then when they go in and do their work, and they disarm the people, like being chill, and then they just escalate and escalate. It's just like, it's perfect. It's so good. It's really funny also. It's got a pretty dark sense of humor, but it is really, really funny. And I also, one more time, just want to mention the structure of the film. I know I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we talked a bit about it in the editing section, but I feel like it actually largely is in the hands of the screenwriter, at least in this instance, than the editors. So yeah, this movie would not be what it is without Tarantino. I mean, this movie wouldn't exist without Tarantino. He wrote it, obviously, but this isn't the last we're seeing of him for sure. Now, the nominees for Best Adapted Screenplay are The Shawshank Redemption, Quiz Show, Nobody's Fool, The Madness of King George, and Forrest Gump. All right, let's start off with The Shawshank Redemption. I mean, this is one of the most beloved movies of all time, because it's got these universal and timeless themes and messages about freedom, and it's just so uniquely human. It's impossible to not connect with this movie. I can't imagine anyone not being able to like root for the characters and their struggle. Before I read the book, which is great by the way, I actually thought that the movie was going to have a bunch of stuff added that's not in the book, because the book is so small. It's only like 115 pages. But because the book is so small, it's actually able to follow the book very closely, very beat by beat. It's a very faithful adaptation. I would recommend reading the book, although if you're not going to be getting anything that's too different from the movie, which I do prefer to the book anyways. But yeah, once again, Stephen King makes another classic. All right, The Madness of King George. Of the three nominees I've seen, this is definitely the weakest of the three, but it's still got a pretty strong script. I remember the thing I said a few episodes back about how The Lion in Winter, how it's able to be both because it's about monarchy, can be both a political and familial drama. This movie kind of does the same thing, not as strongly, not as well. The Lion in Winter is a better movie, but the same thing does apply to a limited extent, albeit it's just a parallel I wanted to draw. However, I do think watching the drama play out was pretty informative and entertaining, but with the other nominees, quite frankly, the movie just didn't really stand much of a chance. Okay, the winner of this award was Forrest Gump, and it is phenomenally written. While I do prefer The Shawshank Redemption over it, I'm far from mad about this win. I like to watch this movie viewing Forrest as kind of a Christ-like figure. It's not a perfect analogy, but hear me out. So, his relationship with Jenny works as like a really good metaphor for God's relationship with humanity. Forrest is everything that Jenny needs. He's good to her, he loves her, he provides for her, but she continuously turns away from him and chooses her more desired party lifestyle. Although Forrest deserves a girl that's much, much better than Jenny, I think we can agree on that, he still chooses to love her, even when she doesn't really give him much reason to. He just loves her and wants to protect her and be there for her and provide. Now, Jenny eventually does get her act together. She gets a job, she cares for her son, but she's only able to do this after Forrest kind of brings her out of her depravity and spends a lot of time with her. And as she spends more time with Forrest, she ends up becoming more like him, which is what we like to call sanctification, my friends. Let me know if you guys see the story in a different way. I think it's a pretty thematically deep movie that has a lot going for it, but yeah, let me know what your takes are on it. All right, the directing nominees are Red, Quiz Show, Pulp Fiction, Bullets Over Broadway, and Forrest Gump. So, biggest snub here is The Shawshank Redemption. Frank Darabont definitely should have been here. An extraordinarily directed movie. That's all I gotta say. All right. Starting off with Red, I just gotta say that Krzysztof Kieslowski kind of ended his filmmaking career with this trilogy, and more specifically with this movie. We've already talked about the cinematography, which is very well thought out, and the performances are also rather delicate, making everything feel quite real. But it's not a flashily directed movie. It's a subtly directed movie. And once again, it's something I just would not expect the Oscars to go for, but it's super cool that they did. All right. Let's talk about Pulp Fiction. Well, I'll say that the screenplay is probably the best part of Pulp Fiction, followed by the performances. It all comes together in such a unique and precise vision because of Quentin Tarantino. He knows exactly what he wants from everyone who's working on this movie, and gosh darn it, he got it. Okay, Bullets Over Broadway. So Woody Allen is super talented. He constructs scenes in a very unique way, and I don't even want to know how many takes it took to get the final product of each scene. But as I mentioned earlier, because most of the scenes, not all of them, but most of them are just a single take, with the camera never once cutting, the attention to detail is crazy because everyone has got to know exactly what they're doing and when to do it. If like the actors alone, they have to memorize all these long lines and do very good performances along the way, which is challenging for both them and also, Woody Allen as the director who's got to, make sure that they're getting the vision that he has for the movie. But if one of them messes up during a scene, or if a cameraman messes up during a scene, or if like a lighting guy messes up during the scene, they got to restart the whole thing. So the fact that it came together as well as it did, I mean, the direction here is pretty impressive. I really respect Woody Allen as a director. All right, the winner of this award is Forrest Gump, and I just gotta say, God bless Robert Zemeckis. I mean, he directs the crap out of this movie. While it's really close, but it's not quite my favorite movie of the year, I do think it is the best directed movie of the year. Just the scale of everything that's going on, a lesser director would have made a movie like this feel very, very directionless and it's just kind of all over the place, but Robert Zemeckis actually gives us a real treasure of a film, and I'm super happy that he won. Now, the nominees for foreign language film are Strawberry and Chocolate, Farinelli il Castrato, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, Before the Rain, and Burnt by the Sun. All right, in terms of snubs, Chungking Express, which we've already talked about, it didn't get anything. If it was going to get something, it would have been probably good to see it in foreign language film, but oh well. Also, real surprise here, Red is nowhere to be found. I would have probably even thrown in Three Colors White, but I mean, Red got nominated for directing and like original screenplay and cinematography. Like it's we've talked about it a few times already, but then when it comes like it's time to shine, like you'd expect it to win, foreign language film, nowhere to be found, which is insane. They did this with the Battle of Algiers too, where they gave it like they were nominating it for like director and screenplay, and then when it's time in the spotlight came, they're like, nope, it's just nowhere to be found. I don't know why they do this. It's a bit of a betrayal, but it's weird. Let's talk about Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. I wish I had more to say about this movie, but unfortunately, I was so tired when I watched this movie. I actually regret watching it when I did. I started watching it when I was already pretty tired, but by the second half of the movie, I was trying to stay awake when I probably should have just gone to bed. I did not fall asleep. I saw everything. I watched the whole movie and I didn't fall asleep, but I just could have had a better viewing experience with it. I really liked the start of it. I mean, there's the opening scene where they're just like preparing the food and you're watching the process. Like, I don't know. I really enjoyed that for some reason. But over the course of the runtime, it started to lose me a little bit. But like I said, that's more so on me than on the movie. So sorry about that. Okay. Before the Rain. Now, although I haven't seen much, Before the Rain is my favorite nominee, which is to say I like it more than Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. Its structure is a loop movie, really, which took me by surprise. I didn't know that going in, but I found it really interesting because it's split up into these 3 parts, and you can actually start the movie at any of these three parts and then watch the two that follow it. You don't have to watch like the first act and then the second act and then the third act. You could start with the second act and then watch the third and end on the first act, or start with the third and then go back and watch the first act and then end on the second act, and it would work. It's weird. Don't try to perfect the timeline. That's not its purpose. But yeah, this movie rules. Last but not least, we have the Best Picture nominees, which are The Shawshank Redemption, Quiz Show, Pulp Fiction, Four Weddings and a Funeral, and Forrest Gump. Now, in terms of snubs, there's one real outlier here. There's one big snub that should be here, but it's not, and that's The Lion King. I know we haven't talked about The Lion King since the beginning of the video, but I mean, can you really pretend that it's not one of the best movies of the year? It's The Lion King. I mean, Four Weddings and a Funeral is not better than The Lion King. But all that being said, this is a very strong list of movies. I have not seen Quiz Show, which is unfortunate. I wanted to. It looked good, but I didn't get around to watching that this year. Now, let's start off with talking about one of my favorite movies of all time and my favorite movie of the year, The Shawshank Redemption. The fact that it didn't actually win a single Oscar is really sad. Apparently, this movie took a lot of time to gain traction. It wasn't very well marketed, so it kind of flopped at the box office. But because of good word of mouth and, award season, it eventually became the most rented movie of 1995. And now has become a stone cold classic that I can't imagine anyone not liking. So I do think this is the best film in a year full of extraordinary masterpieces. I actually had the chance to watch this movie in theaters a couple times, and you can just get locked into this movie and the stone cold setting of the prison. And then when you leave the theater and you go outside, the grass is greener, the sky is bluer, the birds are louder. So it actually is you are able to appreciate the freedom that we have in the real world that much more after watching this movie, giving it one of the most satisfying conclusions in cinema history. All right, Pulp Fiction. Now, this is a movie a lot of people say that should have won the award. I don't really agree, but this year is so stacked. Take any one of these movies, or any of the big three, you know what they are, and any other year I can see any of them winning and would probably be down with it just because they're so good. Now, I think this movie is genuinely fun to watch. It is very rewatchable. It's so memorable. It's Pulp Fiction. Yeah, you probably know it already. If you haven't seen Pulp Fiction, change that today. It's a joy to watch. Four Weddings and a Funeral. I'm sorry, but what are we doing here? If this movie won, I would genuinely throw a fit. Like, it would be an abysmal decision. Did it even get any votes? Like, you can't even pretend it's the best movie of the year. It's not even close, not by a long stretch. It's good. Like, it sounds like I'm hating this movie. I don't, but like, it just doesn't belong here. It's out of place. It has a place. Like, rom-coms like this that are good and fun, very watchable, they have a place. I'm glad they exist. I'm glad this movie exists. It does not deserve to be here right next to The Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, and the winner of this award, Forrest Gump. Now, I don't know if the Oscars have ever had three Best Picture nominees as good as these three since or before 1994. This is a very unique year for the Oscars. And although The Shawshank Redemption, like I said before, is my favorite, Forrest Gump is so perfect in so many ways. I was also fortunate enough to see this one in theaters, and it just hits so hard on so many levels. The characters are lovable and memorable. Some of them aren't lovable, but they can become lovable. You know what I mean? They're well thought out. They're realistic. They change. They develop. The message is timeless and heartfelt. I can't say I'm mad at this one, even if I would have. It's my second favorite movie of the year, so I'm still on the up here. It's one of the best movies of the decade. It's extraordinary, and it's a movie that will continue to be loved for generations. Okay, that's all for today. Really love making this video. It was a really special year for movies. You guys want to tune into the next episode? catch up on movies from 2002 because we're going to be covering the 75th Academy Awards. So watch movies from 2002, and I'll see you then.